Welcome to an episode of Inspired Voices, the Motherhood Edition. This is week 2 of talking about motherhood. Last week we talked about the unspoken challenges of motherhood with Tiffany Williamson here, a licensed therapist and
pregnancy coach, and also a corporate consultant.
Boom. So last week was pretty heavy.
It was.
Right?
Yeah.
We talked about the unspoken challenges of motherhood, like I said, and it was some very, very interesting topics that I feel like a lot of people, not just mothers, but fathers, should know as well.
100%.
And so this week we want to kind of touch a little bit more on what we talked about last week, right?
Okay.
We talked about the balancing of motherhood and their personal identity and stuff like that. But when you talk about the balance of motherhood, what does that mean exactly?
So the easiest way to think about balancing it is to bring into the conversation boundaries. So we talked a lot about last episode, just how motherhood can be all-encompassing. But within motherhood, you're still, like I said, a partner. If you are working in the corporate world, you're still trying to achieve and get promoted and do all the things corporately, while also balancing this big mantle that is motherhood. Yeah. So one of the first things that comes with learning how to balance that and not lose yourself in that is learning how to set boundaries.
Boundaries is a big one.
It is.
Because you're talking about, like, you know, babies and kids. They don't know that.
Oh, they
right?
don't. They don't. And the thing is, you won't be able to give them boundaries because at 2 months, they're just living their baby life. But what you will have to learn is how to, now do I set boundaries with the other people in my life, the other adults or the entities that are in my life, which for some is going to be easy, but then for others it's going to feel abnormal. To have to set boundaries where before you were chill, you would go with the flow, you know, I was hanging out, no kids. And now that you have kids, now I got to set all these boundaries. And it's going to feel uncomfortable for you, but it's also going to feel weird for those that now have these new boundaries set.
Right, right. So, like, I guess it's about priority, right?
It is. And what happens with motherhood is it shifts your priority. So while you as a self was high on your priority list, adding children, and they become that priority, right? And if you are in a relationship, that also has to take priority. So now we're talking about kids, we're talking about the relationship, but most of us, we also come from families, so we're not just moms, and in relationships, we may be daughters, we may be nieces, we may be grandchildren. So how do we then add our extended family back into it? And then on top of that, some of us are friends. You know, we have social lives or had a social life before you had a baby. So that had friends and relationships in that way. And then you may have at work, you may have a certain level of responsibility. So you may be managing a lot of people at work and having coworker relationships and different things. So how do you then reestablish what's now acceptable for you, because now you have a family and things look different, and the weight of your responsibility has grown while everyone else's may or may not have.
Yeah, because, like, especially when it comes to the careers and stuff like that, you know, your job, there's only so many boundaries that you can kind of create, right?
Yes and no. So what it looks like, especially in the corporate world, what a boundary will look like, and I always tell this to moms, to start doing it when they're pregnant, before they have the baby, is if you are an overachiever, if you are one of those that likes to get everything done in a day, you will have to learn to let some things simmer or be on fire while you log off. That doesn't mean a boundary looks like you not responding to an email at 8 p.m.
Oh, well. Yeah,
it looks like you shutting your laptop off at whatever the hour is that your work dictates that you're done. So if you're obligated till 5, you work until 5, but then truly disconnecting from all things that is work. And I call it taking that worker hat off and putting now the mom hat and the other hats that you're wearing back to the forefront. So that's what a boundary looks like. And it doesn't have to be mean, it doesn't have to be rude. You're still fulfilling your job obligations, but you're not overextending yourself because now you have other responsibilities that require your extension, such as your children who don't care that you have work you want to do or an email you want to send. They, like I said, they want their juice, they want their snacks, they want they want to hang out. So learning how to put those boundaries in at work. So not only do you get used to leaving at 5, but your teams, the people you work with, are like, oh, okay, well, I know if I email Tiffany at 8 o'clock, she's not going to see it till she gets back in the next morning. And that's okay.
So letting them get used to that.
Letting people get used to that. And sometimes moms feel, okay, but if I do that, then they're going to feel like I'm slacking.
Right.
I'm not.
Or I'm not going to get promoted.
I'm not going to get promoted. That's not true. Because what you're doing as a mom, one, you're preserving your mental health, which is going to help you in the corporate world. But also, you then know, okay, from the hours of 8:30 to 5 or 9 to 5, I got to give the best version of myself. Because at 5 o'clock, I'm logging off.
Right.
You know, and still get promoted, still do an awesome job while also setting boundaries. Because people that also are in corporate world, they have moms, they are moms, or they are interacting with people that are moms. So you're not the first person to ever put in a boundary.
Yeah.
But what you are helping them to understand is to be respectful of the time that you are working, you know, because that 8 p.m. hour is not for your job. You know, that 10 o'clock hour, it really needs to be for you at that point. So if you're telling me you're working till 10, then we need to go back to what we were talking about episode 1 is how do we put you back into a position of priority and helping you to find yourself? Because if I have a mom and you're burning the candle on all ends, you're not showing up for any of your responsibilities.
Yeah. I feel like life is about choices, right? And so it's never a 50-50 balance, just like they say in like, you know, partnerships and stuff like that.
Right.
Never that. It's just about my choice today is to focus more on this. My focus today is to focus more on that.
Absolutely.
And I feel like people forget that. It's like they have to do everything at once. No.
Yeah.
You don't.
You don't, which is why I said, you know, sometimes you're going to be an awesome corporate person, a so-so mom, and like, an ed partner that day. And then all of that will switch as the days go on. But what helps, especially as a mom, and is to find that balance, is to put in those boundaries. So corporate life, it's helping not only them, but you to understand, okay, it's okay for me to log off at 5 and let things simmer. I often tell my moms, I'm like, if things are on fire, the company is not burned down just because you decided to take a day off.
Right.
So it'll be okay.
Yeah.
And just handle it when you get back in the office. But then, okay, so let's say you've established your corporate boundaries, but what does that look like now with your extended family? What does that boundary look like?
What does that boundary look like? Can you give me an example of that?
Yeah, that boundary looks like, hey, sometimes when your kids are young, so newborn age, it may look like, okay, I really don't want visitors until they're this many weeks, just for their immune system.
Sure.
Or it may look like, you know, let's say you're in a family where you guys get together all the time every Sunday, y'all have family dinner, which is wonderful and great. But now you realize, okay, you're approaching Sundays and you are exhausted because you've just been momming and working and doing all the things. It's learning how to say no. And when I say no, I mean literally saying no without the excuses, without the supporting evidence. I sometimes will say, it's like, well, if I tell them no, it's because I'm exhausted. As a mom, as someone that puts herself back into a position of priority, you will learn that no means no. And you don't have to give everybody an excuse or an explanation for everything. As you're creating your family, as you're growing your family, as you have your own thoughts and feelings, it is okay to tell someone, I won't be at the Sunday dinner today.
I
Love
feel like
y'all.
that's a general thing too. Like,
and I was just about to say that. I'm like, that's a skill. You'll kind of get the fast track learning curve when you become a mom, because sometimes you just cannot. There's not enough hours in a day to do it all. But it's a general life skill that I always am telling all my clients and friends and everybody. No is a complete sentence.
Yeah, I feel like we have to get away from having to explain ourselves.
Absolutely. You don't have to explain anything.
Right.
I mean, you certainly can, But sometimes we use that explanation and the need to explain as a way to allow others to break our boundaries. Like, well, because of that, well, you can still fit it in, or you can still show up to Sunday dinner. It'll only be an hour. No.
And then that excuse might not be good enough for them too.
It may not, exactly, which is okay. That's their right.
Right.
But it's also your right to put that boundary up and say, you know what, me and the family won't be there this Sunday. That's fine. We'll see y'all next Sunday. Or, you know, when you have kids, you're very stuck to nap times. So when you're first starting out with a kid, it's one of the things you quickly realize is that I got to move and operate according to wake windows. Because if I'm trying to be out in the world and my baby needs a nap, that's going to be hell for me. It's going to be hell for you.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be fun for anyone. But if I organize my life around these nap windows, it's better experience. That's my experience, but that may not be the person that planned that birthday party that's now during my son's nap window. So now what am I going to do? Am I going to take my son just so I can show up to a party knowing he's going to be irritable and need a nap?
Yeah.
Or am I going to stay home and say, you know what, love y'all, I will send a gift in the mail. I can't make this one. Or I'll come support you later.
So when there is like a party, for example, but you want to make it, do you have to reschedule their naps or like put it at an earlier day, or is it like 2:00 is always the same time?
You learn that you are not at the control of the schedule. Once you figure out what that schedule is, and depending on their age range, you gotta stick with it.
Gotcha.
There is no, well, like, you know, son, we got to do this. Let's have you nap at 1.
Or like just keep them up until a certain time.
That would be really bad. Now you have an overstimulated baby. What you find is older babies, of course. My 20-month-old, I can push her nap out. It's no big thing. In fact, she'll act like she don't need a nap, but she really do. But when she was 3 months and her nap was from 10:30 to 11:30, no, 10:30, 11:30 was her time to take a nap. There was no me pushing it around. I just restructured my life to make sure that nap occurred when it needed to occur. Otherwise, we all were going to pay for it.
So once you figure out that schedule, like, they obviously would dictate that, right? But like, is it a thing where it's like they're always taking a nap at around that time?
Around that time, yeah. I mean, it's not like they have an internal clock. It's like, okay, it's 10:30. Let me just immediately go to sleep. But you will see the shift in your baby that you as a mom, you as a parent will recognize, okay, well, it's just easier for me to do life if I want to go to the store at noon versus at 10:30 when I know they're going to be irritable.
Yeah.
And not all babies need to be, enclosed in a dark space to take a nap. Some can sleep anywhere. So you learn your baby, you learn the personality of your baby. But the point being is that as a mom, and you're figuring this out, also dealing with your own exhaustion and trying to now navigate family, that boundary looks like the ability to say no sometimes.
Yeah.
And miss a party, and you may have FOMO, you may be like, dang, I really wish I was there. But also being okay with, but I really needed that hour-long break, and I really didn't feel like getting dressed and going out. Because you'll also, as you spoke about last episode, like, to bring a baby outside, it comes with, I got to get the diaper bag, I got to get all these things. Like, it's not just let me pick them up and go.
Yeah.
At least not initially. So sometimes the mental stress of planning for all that, and just allowing the mom to be like, ooh, I didn't even have to get dressed and put a bra on, like do all these things and have to prepare for leaving the house can sometimes be the hour break that she needed.
Yeah.
And it's going to feel weird, especially with your family, because they're used to you being around. And then they want to be around. Yeah. So, but again, we're putting boundaries in place so that way moms can feel like they have some level of control. They feel like they're putting themselves in a position of priority and are able to be successful in all of their roles.
Right.
Now,
when we're talking about boundaries with slightly older kids, right? Like, when does the boundary start to, like, okay, they need to start learning boundaries? It's
like your children?
Yeah.
Definitely when they're at the age where, one, they can communicate back with you. Not to say you can't teach like your 2-year-old, 3-year-old, don't touch this is hot.
Right.
Don't jump here because you're going to hurt yourself. Absolutely. You can start to parent in that way, but a boundary and helping them to understand boundary, they have to be developmentally in a place where they can understand it. So I would say, like, for example, my 6-year-old, we can have a full discussion about, okay, so this is a boundary. Mommy doesn't want you to do this. Whereas if I have that with my 20-month-old, she's like, okay, girl, anyway, and do what she wants to do. So you also have to recognize developmentally where your kids are at and what makes sense for where they're at.
Okay, gotcha. In talking about boundaries, once you start to get used to setting boundaries with other people, your career, family, all that stuff, I feel like your identity starts to change as well, because like you start to become more confident or something like that, right?
You do. I feel like
decisions, especially.
Definitely more confident in your decisions, because you're going to try to make the best decisions that are going to keep your home and foundation at peace, but also in yourself. I feel like becoming a mom, definitely that motherhood instinct starts to take over. It truly is a different beast, per se, because we always joke when talking with moms, like, it's one thing to mess with the mom, but when you mess with her kids,
right,
be ready for the tiger that's going to come out, you know? Or you'll hear news stories of, they messed with their kids and then the mom did whatever the mom had to do. And you're just, and when I hear those stories now as a mom, I'm like, well.
Or even the mom that had to pick up the car because
the superhuman strength, you'll hear about that.
Yeah.
And that's truly because as you become a mom, and that becoming a mom, really, I feel like it happens during pregnancy. A lot of moms feel like not until the baby's physically here, but no. You're a mom as soon as you have life growing inside of you. Those instincts start to take over. Those protective instincts start to take over. But what you will also see shift as you become a mom and go through the different phases of motherhood is your level of, I would say, assertiveness. Your a level of confidence in what you're saying increases, because you no longer are just your voice. Right. You become the voice also for those children that cannot speak up for themselves. So you're also going to be the one kind of fighting on their behalf and making sure your children's being well taken care of at all times, even though those moments that you're not there. And if not, they're hearing from you as the mother, what's happening with my child. So motherhood kind of forces you to grow in that respect, especially if you're not someone that maybe have had an assertive voice or used to be in that front face. Maybe you're used to kind of being in the background and not necessarily taking the lead on things. But the thing is, when you have your kids, it's your voice can make the difference, especially advocating. If your kid is sick, and yes, kids get sick often, especially if you put them in any sort of daycare or even at school. A lot of kids have germs, so they go through a lot of sicknesses. But you know your kid better than anyone else. So if a doctor's trying to write it off or like, oh, this is normal, this is a normal fever, you have enough mom instinct to say, no, something isn't right with my child. And it's the mom that's speaking up, like, no, run some more tests. Like, that's not acceptable for me, or, something is going on.
Yeah. So
you find yourself pushed in almost this position of into the front.
You think it's just like a survival thing?
100%. I think initially, that initial, I would say, instinct that comes on, that instinct of protection, is very much survival. Very much. I remember after all of my births, it takes me maybe a couple of weeks before I want anybody else to hold my baby. Like, you can hold him, but I'm gonna be watching you. Or until I can even feel comfortable, like, leaving the house, And it's not because I don't trust who my children are with. That's not it at all. It's just there's this like instinct of protection. There's this instinct of I need to make sure and ensure the survival of this thing that I've birthed out into the world.
Yeah. What's interesting that you said a little earlier is that you're a mother once you have life growing inside of you. And I was like, for some reason, like, I don't know what I was thinking beforehand, but it just kind of clicked. I was like, oh, that's why when like a mother loses a child, that's why it's so depressing, I guess, right?
It's hurtful because you form that bond. Your heart is already expanding even before you know this baby or seen it. You may have seen an ultrasound, and especially nowadays they have really great ultrasounds, so you can really get not a clear picture, but a pretty clear
it's a little scary.
Picture. Yeah. It can also be a little scary. I'm not going to count that, especially some of the black and white ultrasounds if you don't know what you're looking at. Right. It's a little terrifying. But they do have, ways that you can see your baby in womb, but it's different. When you're carrying life, your body is going through all of these changes, but you're also feeling the baby on the inside. You're feeling the move. Maybe even getting hints of their personality.
Really?
Because I always felt like each one of my kids, they matched the personality I felt when they were in utero.
Oh, interesting.
So you're getting hints of that. And of course, you're physically showing it.
Can you give me an example of that?
Yes, I can. So my oldest, he's very more calm natured. Has always been that way. And that was how I was with that pregnancy. Very calm natured, just very happy to be here. My second-born, they always say the second-borns they're the ones that are going to say the thing, the quiet thing out loud. He's been a force since he came into the world, but it was like that when I was pregnant. I felt like I was like that all pregnancy, that I was just like...
the feeling of it.
Very much so. Like, I am the main character. Listen to me roar.
Really?
And while I'm naturally a leader and I do that, but that wasn't necessarily my personality. And I would always joke with my husband, like, this second one, I don't know. There's a lot of fire here, and very spirited child. And with my daughter, it was very chill, but also very like, I'm here. Yeah. This is me. This is the personality. You're not going to forget who I am. And that is her personality.
And you're not necessarily taking on their personality, but you're feeling
their
personality.
You feel it. You just feel it. You're like, I'm a little extra revved up, or I'm a little more calm than what I would be, So, yeah. And it was just always interesting because they can't, like, those are the personalities of my children. So in
taking that information, can you kind of plan something ahead of time?
As far as
I don't know. Like, if your kid is kicking all the time, he's probably got ADHD.
No. You wouldn't know that much, but I don't know. I feel like moms always have an instinct about maybe the gender. If you ask the mom what the gender is, 9 times out of 10, she's going to be right. She's going to, I don't know. It's just like, you just kind of like, I think I'm kind of a boy or a girl. Yeah. But you can always be wrong. It's a 50-50 chance. Sure. But you just kind of learn a little bit about the personality growing inside of you. But then, of course, when they come out as newborns, they don't necessarily have a personality for a while. And then around 3 months, you're like, oh, okay. And then, of course, when they start talking, then you're like, okay, never mind. There's that personality. But you do learn a lot about them in utero, and just kind of to even bring it back to your identity. So with all of that, going through pregnancy, feeling their personality, then going postpartum, and you're now trying to rediscover yourself, you almost have to reintroduce yourself to you, and then reintroduce yourself to others. Now I've exited this experience. Now the baby is here. This is our life. Now I need to almost reintroduce you to who I am now that I'm wearing this motherhood mantle on top of my other responsibilities. Yeah. Which also comes with setting those boundaries, because what may have been acceptable for me prior to me having this baby may not be acceptable now. And what I may have been quiet about prior to me having this baby, or even just to take it a level deeper, any traumas or childhood things, or just anything that you hadn't worked on that's maybe acceptable within like a family system or relationship system. You'll often hear about couples who not to say they settled, but they just put up with certain things. And then now I have this baby here. I'm not putting up with it.
Right.
Wow. It'll come out. And it could be because now I have this other human here that needs the best of me, and you partner or whatever not bringing out the best of me, or you family member aren't bringing out the best of me, or maybe we existed in a level of dysfunction within whatever relationship we were in, and now that's no longer acceptable because I don't want this baby to have dysfunction, which is why I always say sometimes when you have kids, it will flick up traumas and things that you may either not think are problems or think you've dealt with but haven't, because now you're looking at this pure human being and you're like, well, I don't want them to have the same struggle I had. Yeah. So where it's okay for us to communicate harshly or you to call me out my name, that's no longer acceptable because I don't want them seeing you do it to me because I don't want them to feel like it's acceptable.
And then some people realize that too late. Yeah.
that part too. So that's why sometimes you will see different relationship systems shift upon someone, becoming a mom.
Right.
Because they're
right.
like, I'm not accepting that. And for some people, they are willing to walk that path with you and say, okay, we're no longer going to do that. Let's grow. Some people don't like when you step yourself out of the dysfunction or you start to break the generational trauma that has been the norm for the family for all this time, or the relationship, or I've always called you out your name and now all of a sudden I can't call you that,
Yeah.
So it will look weird. Boundaries
Yeah.
will look weird. But once you start to set them, the mom will be better because of it.
Yeah, I think growing up, I've always wanted, not like when I was a kid or anything, but like a young adult till now, I've always wanted to break that generational trauma and curses and stuff like that and get myself healed enough so I don't pass anything along, although I think I interviewed one person and she was like, well, you're going to send your kids to therapy for something. It doesn't matter how much you heal or something like that.
Well, you want to minimize that as much as you can.
Yeah. But man, I appreciate this talk. It was nice. It was
Absolutely.
needed. If you found this episode helpful, give it a like, give it a subscribe. Let's get the word out. Let's help these mothers and
Absolutely.
partners across the world that are having kids and have some more knowledge. And so if you have any questions or a different perspective, leave a comment down below, and we'll love to hear it. If you have any questions for Tiffany, we'd love to hear it. And you
Absolutely. You can also reach me. I have my website, transformativedestiny.com. If you need to shoot me an email, you feel free to do that. You can shoot me an email at tiffany@transformativedestiny.com. And then Oliver will also put my socials in the description box.
Well done. All right. We have 2 more episodes. No, 2? No.
Yeah.
3.
3. Oh, no.
We have 3 more episodes of Motherhood coming up in May, starting next week. So stay tuned.